Hi, and welcome to the conference room, an interactive book club where each week we discuss, analyse, and predict based on the group of chapters we've just read. I'm Matthew, who Kindle streaks competitively against no one, currently king of stories.
I'm Liam, the Asdan Muggle, the would-be author that can barely spell.
And I'm Zak, the audible opportunist who's forgotten how to read, and I'm completely average.
We welcome you to join us in a book club where one week you're a god, the next week you can be a peasant or Asdan Muggle, which Liam currently is, aren't you, Liam?
Yep.
Asdan, for anyone who's listening and doesn't understand the reference, I guess I need 30 seconds just to explain that. Or Liam, do you want to go over what Asdan is?
Nope.
Okay, so Asdan is what was given to people at college. Instead of doing normal GCSEs, you'd be put in a small group of like-minded individuals, and you'd be given a curriculum more tailored towards your special needs. Is that fair to say?
Yep.
No. So I'm going to hand over to Asdan Muggle Liam, who's going to sort of give you a little summary of the chapters we looked at this week. Just as a little reminder, Liam, it was chapters 21 to 25 of Name of the Wind.
Yep. Right. So, so this week we saw Kavoth's adventures through Tar Bean, a perilous and brutal city that does have some tiny drops of kindness. We find out how Kavoth navigates his way through the city by begging and stealing mainly just to feed a hungry stomach. We see the mistakes he's made and how that gets him into trouble far more than he would have thought. We also hear a tale of Telhue and Incanis and their constant battle against one another in a classic good against evil, which what I considered had some biblical aspects to it. And then the last chapter was just a quick interlude with the chronicler and
we jumped back to the present at the end, didn't we?
Yeah.
Oh, don't know, Liam. That was good. Enjoyed that.
Yeah,
there you go.
A bit of time into that as well. The drops of kindness. That's good. We're gonna have to start analysing your little sentences. I got my.
Chapter 21 was titled Basement, Bread and Bucket. And I believe that's over to you again, Liam, isn't it? To quickly.
No, this is one for me.
I am mid.
I apologise.
And I wrote down the name of that as being Basement, Bread and Butter, so I don't know if it's butter or bucket.
Oh!
I feel like bread and butter makes more sense, but...
Bread and butter... What? Yeah, why did I put bucket? Told you I was rushing my notes this week. I'll find it, Lums, ready? What? I just need to know now. It's definitely butter. I don't remember there being a bucket.
I don't remember a bucket playing an important role.
Chapter 21, yeah?
Yeah. Right.
Yes, but it is bucket.
It's bucket!
It's bucket.
No way.
Oh, wait, maybe I read that. I think I'm losing my mind. I think I...
Right.
Liam, how did you get...
Bucket, yeah.
Hold my fire. I was just about to ask about how I enroll myself on this Asdan course, but I was right.
Right, let's go. So, chapter 21, Basement, Bread and Bucket. Timer.
Have you got the 2-minute timer, yeah?
Timer's going. So, Kavoth's first few weeks on the streets, he tries his hand at stealing and pickpocketing. He discovers a man that occasionally gives away bread, Trappist, and in his basement he finds several cots with babies restrained within them. And I don't know about you, when I was reading that sentence, I was like, no, what is going on? This story has taken a dark turn.
Yeah, hills of ice shit.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I thought it was just taking a real sinister turn where this guy was going to be doing lots of evil things to these babies, but it's actually quite the opposite of that. My only thing on this was I found quite interesting is that, as you said, Kavoth, he's on the streets and he's actually finding it really difficult to like beg and steal, which just goes against everything we've seen Kavoth to be so far in the story, in that when he was with his troop and his family, every time he was picking something up, he was nailing it first time. And now he seems to have lost those and maybe lost a bit of his mind, lost a bit of that ability just to pick something up and be good at it straight away.
Yeah, definitely. But let's go back to Trappist. So he's this 40-year-old gingerly man, softly spoken, incredibly patient, and he's basically looking after all of the children that nobody else wants anything to do with. Children that would be left to die on the streets otherwise. So yeah, not sinister at all. He's actually one of the nicest, caring characters we've seen.
Or is he? I do fully think he is, but there's still a part of me that's like, I don't know, is this guy almost too good to be true? He doesn't appear to be getting anything from this apart from just being a burden.
Well,
I
we
don't know.
see. Oh, spoiler alert for later, but we see that he wears the grey robes, so that shows he's a
Yes.
priest. And I think he left priestliness to actually go and do some real good on the streets. But maybe that's wishful thinking.
Isn't there a line as well where they say they make a rumor about the Kavoth hears rumors about the priests, and so he avoids them or something like that? So
Yeah,
maybe
that's
there's
the next chapter. But yeah, they're basically all pedos, and he runs away from them.
yeah.
2 minutes.
Right, that's timer done.
Yeah. So, chapter 22. That's got to be you, man.
And that is me, and that is A Time for Demons, I believe. Anyone want to double check I've got that title right? Or
I reckon that's good.
I reckon you're good.
okay, chapter 22, A Time for Demons. Are we ready?
Yeah.
You do your intro. I'll start the timer after.
Okay. So Tarbean celebrates A Time for Demons via the midwinter pageantry as Kavoth turns his eyes towards the rich part of town. Firstly, really interesting to learn that this big city, I know it sort of went without saying in my head, but there is definitely a rich part and a poor part of town. We've only sort of seen the poor part of town up to this point, and the rich part of town is very, very different. So Kavoth takes himself there, he goes to beg a rich woman who does pay him handsomely for this, but he's then quickly chased away because they don't want no people like Kavoth up this rich part of town by a guard. He is then beaten to a pulp by this guard because he doesn't want to get himself in trouble of letting like
And
children
that
like
beating
Kavoth
as
up
well.
here.
Like, the only other beating we saw was from the kids, and this one was so much worse. The guy is a grown man with a weapon, and he got obliterated.
He's like throwing him against the wall and everything, and he just keeps going in for more digs. And there's one point where he's even saying, "Don't come back here," and like every time he's stopping a word, he's just punching him or beating him with a stick. Then, however, Kavoth is rescued by Lord of the Demons, Incanis himself. Although it's not actually Incanis himself, it's a member of the town playing the part of the celebrations that Kavoth used to lead when he was with his family's troop.
And how interesting that it's a demon that saves him from, the police.
Yes. Nice little parallel with good and evil there. Maybe that's a little bit of an insight into what's going to happen. Maybe the evil isn't as evil as it's made out to be.
Yeah, and it goes to show, like, he's on the good side of town, the rich side of town, but it's just as bad, if not worse, than the bad side of town. Like he says, he never goes back, I think.
Yeah. Also, the guy gives him some money, I think, doesn't he? And it was more money than what he would have got from the lady that gave him money for what he got beat up for from the guard.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Yeah,
he took for his beating, essentially.
And then,
it was a horrible bit though, where he was so cold, like, and his fingers were so numb, he couldn't even feel holding the coin. So he was just sort of left to the streets in a bloody pulp. It was savage for Kavoth, that chapter.
and the end of that chapter is when he rocks up to the inn. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And he has this opportunity to spend his money and spend a nice warm night in the inn, but he runs away because he hates the sound of the loot. Bad memories.
Yeah, he just can't face his past at the minute. It reminds me a little bit of Simba.
Simba.
He's at the Simba point of his story. Patrick Rothfuss should have put that in instead of the Doors Disney characters.
Yeah. If you just start changing Kavoth's name to Simba halfway through and he doesn't even realise.
Mate, imagine if the clouds part and his dad's looking down on him, but later on.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see.
So, chapter 23.
23, The Burning Wheel, Mr. Chapman.
I've written this in 4 parts, so bear with me. So, part 1, Kavoth is in a pickle. I've written. He's been hurt bad and has tried to rest on his hiding place amongst the rooftop. In a great heart of fever, he ends up walking to Trappist's house, who's using the money Kavoth has to nurse him back to health. Kavoth is having fever dreams. A man with no eyes. So now I've written a man with no eyes because of one of my predictions. I've written a man with black eyes, a man with ghost eyes, and a man with no eyes. Now, a man with no eyes has been mentioned. I can't quite remember in what context, but it was mentioned. I will get back to you on that. And then part 2, Tanya is crying to the annoyance of the rest of the children. Kavoss suggests Trappist tell a story, on which he does. Part 3, Trappist tells a long fable of Telu and Encanis, a somewhat biblical tale of Telu being born from the one and only good person in the village. I can't remember her name. Can anyone remember her name?
Yeah, I've got that somewhere.
I can
Perial,
go.
Perial.
For real. Growing from a baby to a fully grown man, seemingly overnight, and striking people with a hammer into righteousness. Upon the people are demons, and that's where Telu comes upon Encanis. Encanis is an elusive demon, and Telu chases him all across the land. When they finally catch up to one another, Telu chains Encanis to a large wheel and eventually burns him. In the process, Telu realizes that Encanis is about to escape, and so decides to restrain him, essentially burning himself as well. Right. So, and then part 4, that was the last story Kavoth ever heard Trappist tell, and Kavoth suspects him of being a monk. Now, I just want to go back because this is a brilliant bit of writing by Rufus here, and I'll tell you why. So, you know, I said before about like info dumping, like you're not showing, not telling. So, like the opposite of that is info dumping. You're not supposed to give like information away, yeah. And he essentially does it here. He essentially tells you the whole sort of backstory of like religion here. But the way he does it is through a man that can't really remember the old story, so he tells it purposely badly. So he writes a shit version of this story of what he wants to write, but because he's telling it in the purpose of a man who can't remember it that well, he can tell it as shit as he's want, and it still comes out as okay, if that makes sense. It still fits. So by doing that, he saved himself about like 10 or 15 pages just by not having to pepper it in. He just info dumped it straight away, but it worked out really well. I may have forgotten a few things there, so by all means, tell me if I have anything.
No, that was good. Start the timer.
Timer's on.
No, just for me, like on that, I thought it was a really, really interesting chapter. I like how we did get a big first lore dump, but told through like the eyes of someone else, like Liam just mentioned, and so the writer could get away with a few other bits. To be honest, this is just one of those things that I made a note of. I need to reread this chapter because this is our first big chunk of lore, which will come in useful later on down the line. So I didn't get enough from it now, but I made a note that this chapter is a key one, and I'm gonna have to look at it again.
Yeah, it's the first bit of big lore we've had, isn't it? There's some nice quotes there. So, like you say, Telu gives birth to a son, and then that son becomes Telu, and he keeps saying like, "I am the father of myself. I am the son of myself." Don't know, just interesting.
Yeah. It's sort of like, do you see what I mean by biblical? It's sort of like Jesus Christ being born again from a Virgin Mary. Like it seems like this is this world's religion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and then God sacrificing himself at the end to kill this big evil.
Jesus as well, and like the whole thing of Jesus carrying the wheel, and he was carrying Jesus carrying the cross, and he's carrying the wheel. So like another parallel.
Yeah.
What I really liked about
influencer.
What I really liked about this as well is that it was just put into a good point in the story. Because if we'd had this info dump later on or earlier on, I wouldn't have engaged with it as much. But considering the chapter before, Kavoth is saved by Encanis, and then the next chapter we get to find out why everyone's celebrating, who Encanis actually is. It just put everything in a bit more context. So now when we go back to the world, I'm like, right, I actually understand why they're celebrating. I understand why Encanis and that girl had to run away from the townspeople. So yeah, I thought it was just really, really clever writing.
Yeah.
Well said and timed it perfectly in the context of the story.
Also, just want to say, this story was not appropriate for children.
No, a room full of babies and talk about hunting demons and burning alive.
And like rape and all sorts came into that chapter.
Not one you're going to be reading to your children at bedtime, though.
No.
Not anytime soon. Not unless you won't go to sleep.
Keep them away from biblical stories for a while.
Right, nice. That's chapter 23, The Burning Wheel.
So, chapter 24, Shadows Themselves. This was a really short chapter. Kavoth tells us 6 things he learned on the streets of Tarbeen, and it ends on a memory of Kavoth choosing not to help a young boy that was being attacked by a gang, which was like the parallel between him first coming to Tarbeen, and him now. He's been beaten down by Tarbeen, and that's it. He's hard and cold, and he's not going to save people. The 6 things he learned. So he learned to beg, he learned to pickpocket, he learned to run from sweet eaters, which are drug addicts. He learned to make shoes from rags, and he learned not to... I don't know. That's all I've written. Oh, not to ask for help, yeah. Never call for help, because that attracts predators like the smell of blood on the wind.
Was this also the...
Yeah, and ultimately, that's why he did...
Go on after you, go on.
No, sorry, you talk. I'm lagging, so you just talk when you're talking.
Okay.
I'll join in when it's not.
Was this one... So 2 points, right? So sweet eaters, one, that sounds like the coolest drug ever because it gives you nice teeth.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what else it does, but if it gives you nice teeth, like, that's not a bad... There's a definite perk about being a sweet eater. And 2, this was the one where he basically witnesses a child get molested by about 8 boys and then doesn't do anything. Am I right?
I don't know if he was getting molested.
I feel like it was because they were ripping his clothes off.
They were ripping his clothes off,
man.
and they were talking about whimpering sobs. So I was like, that boy's had a bad night. And it also no,
that's made that so much worse.
Yeah, and then I think he said as well that Kavoff had it about 2 months beforehand, so
he should know.
Yeah, like so.
Did he make the right choice? Because he was holding the roof tile, he was ready to go, and
he was gonna do it. Yeah.
He was gonna do it, but then he left it. Well, I mean, to be fair though, like I love you guys, but like if there's 8 of them, like you're just having a bad night, lads. I'm sorry.
It was tough though. Yeah, so although a short chapter, pivotal for Kavoff's motivation from that point on.
It is a bit of a turning point, isn't it? That's it. He's succumbed to the streets now.
Yeah. Right. Final chapter. Chapter 25. It was an interlude, and again, I know I say it every time, but I do like the interludes. And it was titled "Eager for Reasons." Basically, short little summary for this is just we return to the Waystone Inn, where Kavoff reflects on his life at Tarbeen, and he introduces us to his motivation for later leaving Tarbeen. So if you want to start the time, I'll jump into a few bits and then jump in whenever you want, boys. So following on directly from this beating, Kavoff says that he's had many beatings in his life, but he can't recall how many he's had himself, but he can still recall the sobs and the beatings that this boy got as clear as a bell to this day.
Yeah. And he does outright say that this is his biggest regret, not saving
yes.
that boy. Yeah. Even though he probably couldn't have saved him because he was outnumbered.
Yeah, but just that doing something about it. And he says that this was the biggest motivation for him becoming Kavoff who he is today, was this. Like, he can't let it go that he didn't do anything about it. Bast and Chronicler are also in the room with Kavoff, and Bast questions why he stayed at Tarbeen, because as we've learned, as Bast has learned, Tarbeen's an awful place. And then Kavoff quite interestingly muses that maybe this was a bit of his like punishment for not being there to protect his family, but a bit more than that, it just became a habit and he had nowhere else to go. Really nice is that he addressed the big elephant in the room for me, was why he didn't sort of hunt out Ben a bit earlier. And he answered that by saying, look, Ben was hundreds of miles away. I haven't got my father's maps. It's the middle of winter, so although I could survive in the woods before, this wasn't going to happen at this point. I'd just frozen to death. So that he addressed that. Finally, he sort of says again, interestingly, that Kavoff wasn't in his right mind. He was in shock, and part of himself was still sleeping. And he says that he needed something to wake him up and get him out of Tarbeen. He needed to be reminded of things forgotten, reasons to leave, and it took years before he got those things. And he got those things in the form of Scarpy.
Yeah, Scarpy, which is Chronicler's boss. The biggest thing for me for that chapter is that he said that he went there for self-punishment. He kind of stayed in Tarbeen for self-punishment. And I wonder where this guilt comes from, because he was just a boy. He shouldn't really feel guilt. So I wonder if he did actually cause it in some way. I don't know.
It could be, yeah. I know what you mean. I mean, because like, so he goes up against, several boogeymen who kill his parents, and he's angry that he can't help them. And then, other than that, there's 8 thugs that he can't also help. Right? I mean, eight's a lot. 8 is a big number when it comes to one, if you know what I mean. So he couldn't help them either. So yeah, so why is he feeling the guilt if he can't physically? He wouldn't be able to physically do anything anyway. All he's going to ever do is get himself killed.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, I like.
I was just going to say.
No, I like that.
5 chapters in rapid time.
That was good. That was a lot better.
5 chapters in 10 minutes. Yeah.
That's a lot better.
Just need a sign off now. See you next Tuesday for more of the conference room. Chapters 26 to 30.